Hi everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, comfy cozy short sleeve shirt in the PSGF. We're going to work on a larch tree that used to belong to my friend up in Duluth, Mr. Dave Severson. So here we have the Dave Severson tree. So if I know the story right, I believe Candice, my friend Candice, purchased this larch, Tamarack, from Dave Severson at one of the Minnesota Bonsai Society auctions. Let's give it a 360 for you. This may be the proposed front. I really haven't looked at this tree a ton, just moving it around a couple of times, but let's take a peek and you're going to look at it with me. Bring it to the right side where it's leaning. There we go. Bring it to this side right here. Ooh, maybe that's the front. And then this is the left side. And then back to how I started with you. Now, being this branch comes out here, probably not the front that Dave or Candice was foreseeing. Perhaps this is more the front, although this comes into our face as well. So we have a lot of things to consider today on this tree and what we're going to do. We have some buds that are starting to pop out, so this is a good time. It's a good time to repot. It's also a good time to repot for me because this tree is new to me. As much as I have faith in both Dave Severson and Candice and what they've done with this tree, it's new to me. It hasn't been repotted for at least 1 year, and so let's go ahead and do that today. Now, before I dig into this tree, I'm just going to circle it around with you a couple of times because I just want to get a glimpse of it. I want to see what this tree has to offer. Because sometimes we have a rectangle pot and the tree's put in the pot and, did they pot it in the perfect position? According to their eye, maybe. According to my eye, maybe. We'll see. But what if we slightly go this way? And this branch comes more off to the left instead of right here in our face. It comes more off here. We lose a little bit more of the slant, but maybe that can work. Our roots are coming a little bit more at us, which we don't like tremendously either. But when I was spinning around the other day, I did notice, what about this head-on look? Now it's leaning at us, so maybe we just bring it up a little bit more, and we have more of a formal upright kind of tree. But it's not as nice of maybe a formal upright. Then we got this side right here a little off to the center, or off to the left a little bit. We got this nice back branches here, and then we see this tree coming up this way. And this hides, or shows off a little bit of gnarly bark here. There's a bump right here that kind of comes at us. Maybe we trim that back a little bit maybe that'll heal over in time. And the reason why we would trim this one off, this was an old branch at some point, I'm assuming, but we have kind of what might have been a bar branch here, and we've got some reverse taper. So we've got this trunk down here, kind of a big nub down here, and it's got some nice width down here. This bump is a little bit disconcerting to me, but gives it character, so not end of the world. But look at this little skinny section right here. I'm bumping some bark here. I don't want to get rid of that if I can help it. So we have this big bulge right here, which might have been a cut to this tree. And so we have a little bit of reverse taper. And from this angle right in here, we see more of that reverse taper than if we were to look at the tree from right here. Or right here, or maybe even right here. And if this is the new front, I trim this down a little bit, that gets rid of a little of this bump, and then maybe I trim something over here, but that'll make scars, wounds. But it's kind of like something was here and was chopped off, and I'm not sure. So is that just going to be the life of this tree? I'm not sure. So that's just looking at the tree from the front, the sides, and the back, and how we can reposition this thing. We've got a big root going back over here and this big, huge root coming out this way. We don't want usually roots coming right at us this way, so this head-on look is a little precarious. But if it's off-centered a little bit, I like these roots right here. I kind of like that look. And can we make it a little bit straighter here? I'm not sure. So some possibilities as we continue to spin this guy around. So one thing we have to consider is what we're going to do for a pot. So this tree is about, an inch and a half in diameter, maybe an inch and a quarter, inch and a half. Down here it's much wider, more like 2 inches. And so we would typically have about a 2-inch pot to have this thing. Doesn't have a lot of room to grow in this tree. It is kind of small potted. This tree's starting to get bigger. So I have a couple of pots here to think about. Maybe we put this tree in this pot right here. Now it's got a little bit of a green hue to it, right? It's got darker green at the bottom with kind of a tan bottom. And it gets a little lighter at the top. There's some tans in here. And I'm wondering if the golden larch in the fall would really pick up the rim on this pot and down here. And it would kind of fit with this green. And then the springtime with the green. The greens don't match the foliage tremendously. So I'm a little apprehensive of having this. And it's a super shallow pot. So, as we kind of take a look at it here, I'm not sure if that's going to work. I have a mica pot that would increase the volume probably by 2. It'd probably be twice as big. And it's a mica pot, so it's not the prettiest display pot for this beautiful tree. So that's my little concern. I'd like to have it more in a ceramic style pot. I just don't know if I have the right size for it. And so that looks kind of nice, and it'll give it some more room to grow. Now, that begs a question. Do we want more room to grow in this tree? This tree is the most ramified tree in my collection now, with a decent trunk with gnarly bark. It's definitely old. I'll have to ask Dave Severson how old this one. Dave, I'll be calling you if I haven't already. But we have a lot of ramification up top. So remember, we want a thick base. We want it to get thinner towards the top to our primary branches, secondary branches, and then these little guys, the tertiaries. And so this is kind of a ramified tree. It's one of my most. And so when we have a more ramified, mature tree, we want to keep these trees a little bit slower to grow, not faster. So maybe this pot is just a little bit too big, and we keep it in the same pot it's in. And some of that decision will be made maybe based on what the root sections look like. And then we have this guy that's kind of middle of both pots. Now this one is the very same color almost as what it's in. It's in kind of a bronze rust looking pot. And though it's got a little slight rounded edges on it, it's a little bit more of edgy type pot. And this one is a little bit closer to an oval below it. And it's just a little bit bigger. Just a little bit, but not too much. It's not very much deeper. We're talking a quarter to a half of an inch deeper, possibly. But it just gives it a little bit more room to breathe in there. And this is a ceramic pot, nothing fancy, but a nice color. It's a darker brown color where this has some redder rust hints to it. And again, I think both pots serve this tree very, very well. The reddish color, or the golden color would definitely look pretty with this pot in the fall. So I kind of don't want to take it out of that pot. But again, let's see the roots, and then we'll see maybe if it can go into one of these two pots. So I think we'll pass on the mica. I think we'll pass on this green right here. We'll focus on one of these two pots for this beautiful larch. I've got my tray here. It's time to get this beautiful tree out of the pot and check it out. It's getting kind of toasty in here. Thermometer says we're at about 77 degrees. So at about 80 degrees, the fan's going to kick back on. So we're going to get some air circulating in here so it can maybe cool this off a little bit. I'm in a short sleeve shirt and I am already starting to sweat a little bit. So the fan's doing its work. It kicked on at 80 degrees, or 75 degrees rather. I turned it down and it stayed on for only a couple minutes and it got the temperature below 75 degrees, just like that. So very nice. We're going to have to water our trees today because it's really warm in here and these plants are drying off in a hurry. So it's one thing I have to keep in mind now, that the PSGF is open for business for these trees. They are going to dry out much faster. So at first look with the larch, we've got a lot of fine roots down there, a lot of roots moving around. We're going to dig this thing out some more, and then we're going to see what we have to clean up to put back into a new pot, whatever pot we choose. The sun's moving in the western sky and changing the shadows of the backdrop a little bit. I'm going to have to get some more shades in here for filming purposes, just so we can see the tree longer. But we can still see the tree in the shade over here a bit. And you'll notice I'm getting a fairly good start to these roots here. And like any repot I would do, I don't need all those long roots. We're going to cut them all pretty short in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and just get some of these that are really long and get those out of there right away. Now, we want a 360-degree pattern of roots typically around our tree, and this is planted in a rectangle pot, so we have kind of a rectangle shape right now. So we'll keep sorting all this out and see what we got. I'm going to dunk it into some water again here and see what we have to work with. Looks like there's an old wire in here. Look at that. This tree has definitely not been repotted for at least 2 years because of the way the roots tangled around the outside of the pod here. That looked a little too aggressive for just one season of growth. So my assumption is minimum of 2 years since this was repotted last. And I'd have to reach out to Candice to see if she's repotted it since she got it from the auction for Mr. Severson. And if she did not repot this one, I'd have to, again, talk with Mr. Severson and see what he comes up with when he repotted it last. We don't have a lot of white tips. Some of these tips are from me cutting or from me scraping. So the root system is ready to wake up very, very soon. Of course, it's starting to push out some energy to the foliage because we have some foliage that's there. Tried to be very, very careful on the bark of this tree. I did get a couple of bumps there and knocked a few pieces off, but that'll mature over age, and more flaking and more bark stuff will hide that, and it'll gain its consistent color. What I like about this tree so far is on the one side of the tree. Now, it's not all the way around, and I'd like it to be more around, but I like all these exposed roots right here now. So this is fantastic for one of those kind of a replica, if you will, of forest that my son and I have gone and hiked on when we go up to the Superior hiking trail of the Duluth and North area in Superior, off of Lake Superior. And yeah, a lot of exposed roots. So I'm going to try to keep those when I think about my design for this tree. Now, before I make any decisions on this tree, I do have to consider how it's going to go in the pot. So what roots do I want to move, shift around, cut off, based on how I will have this in the pot. So if I bring the bigger pot back right now and put it in there, it fits in there beautifully. But the soil would cover most of the roots, so we're going to certainly raise it up a little bit in this pot. And I'm wondering if we can twist it a little bit more this way. Again, do I go something like this? Do I twist it like this? See those roots? Do I come more this way? From corner to corner? Then we see this kind of scar here a little bit. So let's talk about this just a little bit before I make my decisions here. So one of the concerns for me about making big moves on this one is, you know, I'm making a repot right now. It's a new tree to me. I really love larch. I have a lot of larch. I feel I'll take good care of this larch. But some things that I still see are things that I want to think about for the future of this tree. Now, because this is in a ramified stage, we don't want really thick tips, and so we have to be very careful of the tips getting too thick up here, because very apical dominance on tree like this larch. And they're just going to have all the power and energy up top. And so it's going to want to grow big and thick. And you can see some of these branches up at the tips here are really starting to thicken up. And you get a lot of thick, bulgy branches, and it's hard. So a tree that might have been refined for a couple of years, and this is all new to me because I don't have much refinement, but when talking with Peter T. and folks, we try to figure out how we can make the tree maybe a whole, well, not a whole new shape, but a slightly different shape based on, you know, what we have to work with and what can we make smaller at the tips. Can we get rid of some of the bulkiness? And here's an example right here. If we change the angle of this tree, look at how thick that branch is compared to this one. So we've got a nice thick trunk up here, and this is almost as thick as way down here. This is getting a little bulky right here. This is a really pretty branch, but I'm not going to chop this tree off right here. That's a whole nother shohin tree right there, but I'm not going to do that to this tree. But it looks a little bulky from this angle. So if I went to this angle, I probably wouldn't stick with this angle because of that bulky. But now, is the bulk hidden this way because of this branch in our face? Or is it better like back tucked in over here with this branch kind of in the way of seeing that bulk? So this is the way it was in the pot, and this is kind of in our face. And if we twist it just a little bit to this way in the pot and show off those roots, we can get rid of this branch right here maybe, or lessen it for sure, make all these branches go down low, and then that kind of hides the big thick branch over here, and also shows off more of the curve. So I think I'm going to put the tree in this way. So with that in mind, we're moving a little bit towards these front roots, and it's not going to fit in this pot quite as nice as I was hoping this way. So I'm going to trim some of those roots off to begin with and see if we can get our radial root pattern a little bit better in shape. So as in any tree, I'm going to come down and I'm going to make it flatter. Look at this long root just laying on the bottom. We'll just cut it right here and have more spread out roots. Now again, I'm not going to manipulate much on the back roots because I want some of those to stay on to get some more roots going out that way. And even though I want to make this shorter, I'm going to sink this in the pot more and bend it down more. Now, there's a root right here that's growing up. I'm going to cut that off. Right there, that's kind of shooting more up in the air. So we're going to get rid of that one. Then there's a root that's coming over here that's really crossing deep in this tree. It's underneath that root. I'm going to get rid of that one. There, now we have, we have this flowing root here. We have this nice gnarly one here. There's one that kind of grows underneath that one. Now I like the gnarliness because when I go on my hiking trails, there's a lot of gnarly roots that cross over each other. And I don't want to get rid of all of that, but I want to get rid of some of it to get a little bit more semblance of a radial root pattern. So that one was wrapped underneath this one and underneath the bottom. So opening that up a little bit, I can spread out some of these roots now a little bit more. There we go. And we can get some more growth going down, hopefully, from this side of the tree and spreading out more in a radial pattern here on this part of that tree. So I'll dunk this in water again here in a little bit. And this guy right here is a super long. We're going to cut that off. We're going to push this down into the pot a little bit more. So all of these up front here, I'm cutting off, but we're going to put those down into the pot just a little bit if we can. We might have to put some rocks. Good old rocks to hold some things down here in the beginning. All right, so it's nice and flat. Got rid of most of the excess. I'm not sure where that one's coming from. I'm going to cut that one off. And I cut a little bit shorter here, so let's see if we can make a few more of those little adjustments. Again, I don't mind some of the roots overlapping. I just want to make sure that it's not too overlapping. I'm going to cut that one off right there and pull it off and see where it's. There we go. I got rid of some roots there. But there's plenty of roots down here. We'll get some new growth, new movement over back here, I hope. This guy right here is kind of coming up in a real funky way. It's a nice exposed root though, but I don't know if I want to get rid of that one or not. We have kind of a concave area in here where we'd love to see more roots. This is a couple of the big major roots. This one's really big, a little disproportionate to everything else. I think I'm going to cut this root off right there to just be able to see that root coming down from that bulbous area a little bit better. There. That root was hugging in so tight in there, we couldn't even tell the separation between that one and this one down here. So I want to see, there's another root down here. See these roots right there? they were hidden. They were just all growing on top of each other. So we can get these shorter, redirect them in the repot to start growing different directions. We might be able to see some fun movement on some roots over this way. And I think this one's just way too big. With that big one there, I didn't like how that was going in that direction, so I wanted to just cut that one out a little bit. So here's a root here that I could see down there, and it was just tucked underneath there. Tucked underneath there is not going to do us much good. We'll cut the tucked under part and see if we can get some more roots to grow just more radial from that point right there. Actually, I'm going to cut it off right there. There we go. I certainly didn't know what I was going to expect with this tree. I didn't know what I was going to be cutting off and how much of this is all kind of fused together as far as root structure. But we have a pretty good root pattern now here. You know, we've got the big ones out here. We've got the big ones coming down here, and you can see the roots. Most of them are growing down now. I got one funky one here that grows up and then down, but I'm going to leave that alone with some of these scriggly roots in here and see what happens in the next 2 years of growth on this guy. And then we cut a lot off on the bottom to make sure it's super flat here again. So we've got a super flat bottom tree. So let's kind of look at it in the pot and see what we might choose, and maybe we can tie this guy in. Because this one I'm going to tie in for sure. We're going to mount it up about this high and get those some of those roots exposed, but not all of them. In time we'll grow more roots down. That'll be more fine feeder roots down here, and we can expose these a little bit more. I'm going to shove some of those down with some rocks possibly. But yeah, let's get some wire in there and some soil, and we'll get it in. We've tamponed in the soil. I think it's a little lower than I hoped. I hope to have it a little bit more on the lip. But we can see this back root back here. You know, if we're looking at the front of the tree from about there, we can see this root kind of coming around here, which is kind of fun. We can see this root here, and this root's kind of coming back here. So for right now, with this repot, that seems to be in a good spot. And we'll see how many more fine feeder roots we get from all the tips of those, and we'll see what we can do for next time in bringing it up a little bit. I don't know how drastically I changed the angle from before. I have a before picture, I'm sure, now that I'll have to go back and look at. But it's not quite as this way as it was before, I don't think. Or maybe it's almost identical. And I don't like the bump on this side, so I'm still going to pursue this as this is the front for this iteration of this tree. So let's get a couple of things trimmed up here, and I'll give you my reasoning by why I'm doing this. Now I could wire this because it's a pretty refined tree. We could wire everything out to make it look all nice and pretty, but we're going to get rid of some of these long branches, and we're going to get branches that are growing up and just making things a little bit more challenging for us. So this first primary branch, which kind of comes out at us now, but it swoops off to the left, it's got this section up here that's kind of going up. It's going too high. I'm going to cut it back right to this interjunction right there, cut that off. And now that frees it up over here a little bit more. And again, we have one going up here, and this is going up a little bit here too, so let me cut this one off. We have a nice bifurcation right here, and a bifurcation down here. But now we don't have this protruding up in the air as much, and we have the formation of this pad right here. You see how this pad has been nicely formed by the previous owners? We've got a nice pad there, nice pad forming. Now this one right here, remember I talked a little bit earlier about this tree is getting thick and chunky, right? So we have a branch right here that has 2 back branches. I'm gonna probably hide this, but we got a division of 3 here. So remember in bonsai, we always want to go to 2 and not to 3. And the one my scissors is on is a little bit thicker here, but it's got a bifurcation right behind it. So if I go ahead and cut that off, now I have this side, and this side's a little bit longer. So let's go ahead and cut this a little bit shorter. Let's cut this one going down off back over here. And this one's going inside right here, so let me just cut that a little bit. So now we have a bifurcation of here, and that cleaned out that area a little bit more. Now this is kind of growing up right there, so I'm gonna get rid of that one. I'm also gonna get rid of this upward one here too, so we have this pad laying more flat, and get the branch underneath there, shorten that up. So we have this pad right here forming real nice. We got a little bit of a tall branch back in here that's cluttering things up. There's 2 branches fighting each other back in here. So right where my finger is, there's 2 branches. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this one right here out so it's got more room to breathe back there. Clean that up, and then we've got this, and we'll see what that does. And that branch, hopefully we'll get some more growth. And if we don't need that branch, we can cut that one right off because we got this one coming out nice right here. I'm gonna cut the inside of this off as well. We're gonna cut this one a little bit more off this direction. And we're gonna cut this bottom section off right here. And there, now we have this nice pad right here. This one's going a little bit up in the air, so let's cut this off. And so here's our first pad right here. Now this goes a little bit low, so we don't have that quite stepping pattern here. So this one's a little bit low. So let's see what we can do with this guy back here. Any 2s and 3s, I'm just gonna shorten this and shorten this. We've got one kind of back here that comes up. We're gonna cut that off, so we just have this nice bifurcation over here. And I'm going to cut it so it grows more up. There we go. And I'm just going to cut this one back and these 2 back. So that's that nice little formation of that pad. Now see how this is getting a little bit close to this? Now we could wire here. We could certainly do that. But I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that branch. So we have a nice branch over here. I'll keep this one on top. Change the direction a little bit over here. And get rid of this inside one. And now we've opened that up for more ramification. And this one's kind of growing kind of weird over this way and this way, but we'll keep it for right now. And then make it shorter and make it shorter, and those will start growing. Now this is a tray right here. 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's cut the bottom thick one off. We're left with these 2 left and right. So let's thin that out. Now when we come over here, this is the great part of broad directional pruning. These 2 are fighting over here, so let's just cut this one off right here. Now we created some gap here, and then we've got a nice bifurcate right there. Let's just cut this thick one off here and let these all shoot out now. So I shortened that back there, and so from this side, we'll want that to shoot out a little bit here and fill in that pad a little bit more. I can maybe bring this one back just a tad and this one back a tad to even that playing field out. So these are still a little bit dangly, but we can bring this down more with wire future if we want to. And there's those 2 branches. Now this one's coming back inside towards the tree, so let's just get rid of that one. This does the same. I'm going to get rid of that one too because I just like how this branch comes out over here and comes over here and forms this fun branch over here. Now they crisscross each other here a little bit, so let's just go ahead and cut this back again and see where this back buds. And we have now a really fun branch that moves around, and we'll see if we like that in the future. I don't think we need this gin anymore, that dead branch. I just want to cut that right off to clean that look. And this is the front of our tree now. I want to see that tree all the way up to this gin right here. So this pad is looking pretty good. This pad is here. This is kind of the forming of a possible pad. We'll see if we get some back budding back in there. So this guy right here, there's one growing up right here. This bifurcates, so let's get rid of that and that. So again, it's going more out this way and not towards the viewer. We'll cut this one off a little shorter. This has got a great branch behind this one. See, this is a nice curvy branch right here. It's really got a similar, it doesn't taper very well. It's really long and windy, so it's cool, but it's got a couple branches back here, and one is really winding. It's just tucked in here in the inside of a curve. So I just want to clean that up and just make this branch a little bit more smooth flowing. And because it's right above this gin here, it's a little bit disconcerting. We might not keep that long term. But look at this other stuff first. This guy right here is a really weird branch going straight up. We're going to cut that one off. This one's leaning up, so let's go ahead and cut this one off. This one goes up from way back down over here, growing back towards the tree and shorten. So we just cleaned up this area here, and it is still coming out towards us a little bit, but more this way to the left. And we got some branches competing in here, so we can either matter of fact, let's go ahead and get rid of this one right there. So this is a little bit more free flowing right here. Nice wiggle up here to this branch. And we can see the movement, especially from the aerial. Now, this branch right here competes with this branch back here, so we might even consider taking this whole one off at some point. And it is a little thick up here. We have 1, 2, and 3. Let me pull back just a little bit. We have 1, 2, and 3. And if we get rid of this one, we can see the movement of this trunk so much better. So we're going to cut that one right off. That's a big old branch. And that's a pretty scary cut for most young bonsai enthusiasts. But we've got this branch that kind of curves up here and then comes and swoops over this way. It's really fun. But now it opens up that gin. We can really see that gin. And this guy right here is so big and thick again, we're going to cut him back. And now we have thicker to thinner right here. This one's coming back at us a little bit. Let's cut that one off. And now we can kind of see this forming a little bit of a pad here. This one right here is kind of all over the place. We're just going to cut a couple of these off right here and just thin that out a little bit, get this downward facing one off of there. And then we have this as potential pad right here. But you see how this is flat? And then we got this growth up here. Maybe we just cut this whole thing off right here. Now we have this fun branch right here. This takes also some of the girth off of down here possibly by cutting this one off shorter, because this is getting to be a thick branch as well. That real thick one's back there. Now, if you can all see this beautiful buds back here, this is growing way in towards the tree. We don't want that one, so we're going to cut that one off as well. And again, it opens up for us to see this beautiful tree, which is going to grow, and we're going to see all kinds of new buds shooting out on this tree. Okay, so a little bit in our face here. We probably could cut this branch off right here, but we're going to keep it for this year and see this pad develop. And I don't like this one in here, so I'm going to cut this one out actually. There we go. We have a nice pad right there. We have a nice pad right there. We have a nice pad developing here. And we got this one that kind of comes off of this secondary branch and comes up over here with a couple of funky growth patterns here. Let's just get the ones that are growing up out of there. See if we get some back budding. Shorten. This one's growing up. Shorten. And we'll leave that now. I don't like, again, how this is on the same plane as this, though. These here, right here, are the same. It'd be nice if we had some offset. So this whole branch may go someday as well. And we've got this branch that's coming out here to form pads over here. So we'll leave it for now. I'm going to leave this one here. Now back on top where these two spread out, this is becoming our apex here. But I don't want this one coming at us. So let me just shorten this one, shorten that one. I think this right here just has to come off. And we see this branch going up. And so one of these three is going to be the apex up here. So you see how nice and thick that is? I say nice, but it's really getting a little bit too thick. So we're going to go ahead and cut some of this off right there. There we go. Now we can see the curve of this tree so much better. That was on the inside of a curve in here, and we couldn't see the growth of this tree. Now I'm going to cut this one off too, so we can have this zigzag more this way. And this one is a little bit more robust over to the right, so let's cut it off to the left. And now we have this ziggy-zag here with our new leader up here. We'll cut this one back to here, so we're not growing up. We got a couple branches competing here. Take one of them out. And back here, this is coming at us again from an area where there's 4 or 5 branches. Beautiful branches. Too many of them, crisscrossing and clouding things up in here and making it too thick up here. Again, this is part of the problem with a larch. When it gets old, we get real thick up on top. And you see how these two are about the same? This one's in our face a little bit. Let's cut that off as well. And now we have this tree up here that we might get some back budding down in here. And we can cut this back even further for future iterations of this tree. This one looks like it's some gin. That is some gin. I think it's lost in the tree. Cut that one off. Cut that back one off. And those are going to grow up there. So I'm going to turn this tree around. In the back here, we've got this branch growing right out of the crotch of this other branch. And that's going to create a bulge someday, especially up at the top. This one's growing two in. This is growing two up. This one maybe as well. Some great branching in here. Some fun stuff. We'll get this one that's going down. So now we have this here. We have two planes of this possible pad out here. So we're going to cut this one off right here. We don't want that. Now we have this nice pad out here. Look at how nice and flat that comes out, and everything's going to grow up. We've got some nice every other patterns. I'm going to cut that one to thin it out a little bit more. Cut this one to thin that side up. And now we have a branch coming out here, a really strong branch here and here. And yeah, it's looking pretty nice. Now look at how much we've cleaned up that pad right there. Sun's going down further, probably hard for us to see now. We got this branch growing at a funky area. Let's cut that one off. I don't like that clouding up that top there. And again, all the stuff I'm cutting from the top is going to keep that top from getting super thick and bulky. This one comes at us a little bit too much still, so I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this one that way, right there. And we'll get some back budding from this guy right here. So we got these layers of pads. We got a tree kind of going up this way. This one's still a little thick and dominant, so I might need to trim that one back a little bit. But again, this year right now, I think I want to hold tight a little bit. This one kind of crosses back here, so we can't see all the branching. That's pretty nice. This one, I don't even know if that one's alive. That one was dead. So now we have a pretty nice tree here. Well, we had an awesome tree. Now we have a tree that's just tidied up. It always was an awesome tree. I am blessed to have this tree. And now we've thinned this thing out, and this thing hopefully will shoot up to the sky. Now I still don't like this gin shooting up at this branch right here, but if I take that off, we have a pretty hefty gap right there. But right now we have a very symmetrical steps up here, which is not bad. It's kind of going a little bit conical here. So not too bad. These will all reach out. We'll let this one run a little bit more maybe, but see how thick this branch is? It's thicker than these down here. Maybe not thicker than that one though. So this one we have to watch. We have this nice branch here that has some movement that if we cut that off, we could have some more pads developing down here and droop them down eventually. And then on top we have to be careful. So notice we've got this branch on the back. We have the main branch I said is our new apex. We got a branch over here and there's a thick branch back here for some back texture, but it's super thick. So with all of that real thickness, it's still going to lend to be a very thick tree up there. Now we could cut this whole tree off right here and let this be the leader, but it goes way in the back and it's a little bit awkward. So we've essentially flattened this tree out a little bit. We turned it, I think, ever so slightly. Again, this is still a little bit of an eyesore, but we see our trunk going up this way. Then we see some more trunk up here. We'll have some greenery here in a little bit. And that'll be a nice little hole into this gin right there. Some dead wood. We've got a gin back there too. Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. Let's go ahead and give this thing a 360. So here's the new proposed front. I don't know if it's much different than before. And we have this kind of, again, in our face a little bit. I could have maybe angled that tree just a little bit more tilting, huh? Fun tree, and then this way is the right side now. And this becomes the new left. That's not a bad looking tree either, but again, we really are highlighting this reverse taper here with this and the big bulge down here. I didn't cut any of that off today. We come over to the left side. And you can see the really nice, beautiful branching when you come up in here and look at the wiggles in here. Such a nice job that Dave did. So here we go, and Candice, whatever she did to this tree, I'm not entirely sure. So we have some of our foundations for some pads. The primary branches are looking really good. We could always cut back to the primaries and hope for new secondaries. And we lost about maybe a third of the tertiary, maybe a half. We still have some left, but those will shoot out all new shoots this year, and we'll have a beautiful larch tree. So my thanks to Candice for keeping in touch with me and being so gracious to let me take her trees as she was moving on in life. And we'll take care of this some more. And Dave, I hope you're satisfied with our work today. We've got a new pot situation. We've got some trim work, and we'll let this thing start to grow for another season. So here we have the Larch, the Tamarack, formerly Dave Severson, Candice, and now part of Dave's Bonsai. A new pot, slightly bigger, trimmed it up a little bit. We'll put this back on the bench, and what a fun tree this is going to be. I am so blessed and honored to have this tree from Candice and Dave Severson. Hey, that's going to wrap up another one. We'll see you next one. A lot to do this spring, man. March Madness is on the horizon. Hey, take care of you, take care of your bonsai, and we'll catch you on the next one.